Yo, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video. So, my time with Gray Zone Warfare has been nothing short of fun, and yes, it's an alpha. Yes, things are broken, but at this stage, I'm impressed with what I've seen, what I've played, and I want to talk about some pros and cons of what I experienced, so let's get into it. Exploration and multiplayer. First of all, the game allows the player to feel immersed in this visually stunning world with breathtaking graphics and a beautifully designed game map. Kudos to Madfinger Games on creating this world. It really does look amazing. On my i5 12600K 3060 Ti with 32 gigs of RAM on medium graphics, I got around 30 frames per second, and on low graphics, I got around 30 to 50 frames per second. There's definitely much room for optimization, and I'm looking forward to see how well they can optimize the game for low rig PCs so we can try to push the frame rate limit a bit higher for normal settings. I did my best to explore many areas of this meticulously crafted game world. I played a lot of time solo and a lot with the one and only A Squad Gaming, and outside of some crashing and freezes and bugs here and there, the game was pretty seamless in our multiplayer sessions. Now, the game world is not a raid type system like Tarkov, which I personally love, so teammates can die, respawn, and regroup with no worries of one teammate dying and having to wait to group up again, or having teammates leave the game so you and your friends can regroup and start again. One of you can exfil back to base while your teammates push forward and keep exploring, and I really enjoyed the fact that whether dying or losing a network connection, it didn't mean that other players had to also exit the game so you can regroup. Madfinger Games has created a game that allows non-stop playtime in the game world, and that is a huge plus in my opinion, especially for normal audiences out there that just want to get in-game and play. We explored and discovered landing zones, which provided a good push to explore and move out beyond the comfort of the starting zone. It was nice that the game seems to provide that sense of discovery during exploration within the game world and pushes players to move deeper into enemy territory to discover more LZs for easier access to other cities. Rather than restrict players to predetermined locations, it encourages them to actively seek out and uncover new areas and possibly be engaged by enemy players on the map. This design philosophy not only adds an element of discovery, but also empowers players to chart their own path through the game, and it allows them to seek out or just find landing zones organically. The game promotes exploration, granting players the freedom to explore at their own pace and uncover these hidden LZs along the way and possibly encounter enemy players as they do so. Weapon modification. For me, weapon modification is seemingly straightforward, and although there is a learning curve for those of us out here who aren't gun savvy, it is somewhat intuitive for players of all skill levels. Simplicity in weapon modification ensures that players can easily grasp the mechanics involved, and that eliminates potential frustration or confusion, allowing players to focus on fine-tuning their loadouts to suit their playstyle before heading out into the battlefield. Weapon modification also encourages experimentation and creativity with different types of playstyles. Players can learn and understand how each attachment or modification affects their weapon's performance, and in doing so, they are more likely to explore different combinations and strategies. This is good in my opinion because it can lead to a varied gameplay experience as players adapt their loadouts to meet the challenges they face. Now, from a strategic standpoint, this type of weapon modification system promotes adaptability on the battlefield. Players can quickly adjust their loadouts to counter different threats, and that provides flexibility and adds depth to the gameplay, as players must constantly assess and modify their approach to overcome the challenges they face. At one point early in the game, I actually had to abandon my M4 and swap to an AK while scavenging for ammo to make it through a city filled with enemies, and for me, that was extremely fun. Weapon and combat sounds. The sounds of war can significantly impact the overall gaming experience, either enhancing or detracting from the immersive nature of the games we play. Combat sounds like gunfire, cracks, and snaps are crucial for creating a sense of realism and authenticity on the battlefield. The sound of gunfire, explosions, and other combat-related noises serve as important auditory cues that help players understand the intensity and proximity of the battles they are engaged in. When these sounds lack depth or fidelity, it can break the immersion and make the gameplay experience feel artificial or disconnected from reality. The quality of weapon and combat sounds is vital for player immersion and, more importantly, their situational awareness. Precise and distinctive sound effects are essential for identifying threats, locating enemies, and reacting swiftly to changing circumstances. Distinctive sound effects help players identify different types of weapons, gauge the distance of gunfire, and locate enemies or allies. This feedback is essential for our strategic decision-making on the battlefield. When weapon sounds lack depth, it becomes more difficult for players to differentiate between different firearms, gauge the distance of incoming fire, or to know what direction the enemy is shooting. This can lead to frustration, confusion, and a sense of disorientation during gameplay. Players need immersive sound design because it enhances the immersive nature of combat encounters. The audio in a game needs to deliver precise auditory feedback. Gray Zone Warfare has a long way to go in this department, but the initial stages look good so far in my opinion. I was able to gauge the direction of enemy gunfire most of the time, and that was enough for me to pinpoint enemy locations and engage them. As far as sounds outside of the realm of combat, the game world is filled with the sounds of nature, frogs and mosquitoes constantly humming about, and although I see that some in the community were annoyed, I didn't mind it. Gunplay and movement. The gunplay feels good. I enjoyed shooting the weapons regardless if the AI responded to being shot or not, which is a conversation in itself. But there is a lack of certain fluidity and a feeling of rigidness when it comes to movement and precise input from the player. Although shooting the weapons feels good, the mechanics governing weapon handling, aiming, moving, and firing lack a specific input detection when trying to move quickly. I found myself stuck in certain animations, unable to move in dire situations. For instance, going prone locks you into a 12 o'clock camera direction, so if shot from the flanks, you are unable to get down and turn and shoot at a whim. It takes a long time to go prone, wait for the animation, turn, aim, and then shoot. Trying to crouch, stand, shoot, lean, prone, shimmy, etc. There's just a lack of smoothness and responsiveness when trying to get a 360-degree understanding of the battlefield. This can make gunfights sometimes feel clunky and unresponsive, hindering the player's ability to react quickly and effectively in combat situations. Can I crouch, turn, aim, shoot, move, go prone, shimmy, stand, turn, aim again, shoot? It all just begins to feel bogged down by the nature of how the animations work and how limited things can feel when you might be too close to an object that doesn't allow you to do what you want. For instance, raising your weapon while behind chest-high cover or leaning out from a tree. I found myself having to back up just to raise my weapon when using certain objects for cover, where your brain is basically saying, I should be able to raise my weapon right now. When gunplay begins to feel bogged down due to these circumstances, players may feel restricted in their ability to execute these types of maneuvers, and this can lead to a sense of frustration and dissatisfaction, as players are unable to fully commit to certain strategic maneuvers. Certain aspects work just fine if you're not trying to do too much at once, but these aspects of animations, locking you into certain situations, or input lag, detracts from the overall moment of random combat encounters. Now, this critique may be because I'm a big fan of third-person games, and playing games like Ghost Recon Breakpoint for so long has spoiled me to the fact that I can go prone and turn my camera at the same time, and then aim in a sidewards lean or shoot at my 6 o'clock on my back right after I went prone while moving towards 12 o'clock. But this is just the nature of video games and how they are designed and operate differently. One thing devs can try to fix, in my opinion, is that running at 12 o'clock and holding the turn head button They need to allow the player to look well past what they are allowing right now and what they have the head movement locked to. We should be able to see well over our shoulders and well past 180 degrees by mimicking turning the head and looking back. This is something Arma 3 does extremely well, and I'd like to see Gray Zone Warfare change this. The health system. The ability to heal with specific items for specific injuries is a very cool system, and I like it a lot. Checking to see what injury you have and utilizing the proper medical care is a learning curve, but it is definitely immersive and can be fun for medic type players who are looking to play that role. Reviving teammates and providing medical aid introduces an interactive element to gameplay, and fans of Arma 3 and the Ace medical system will enjoy what this game provides in this department. This feature enhances teamwork and immersion by allowing players to assist each other in combat, share items, heal each other, and it creates a great cohesive system among teammates. Enemy AI. PvE encounters are all over the place right now, but I know this is one area they will buckle down and try to make as good as possible. Sometimes enemies never die and feel like bullet sponge enemies, or more so, they just feel broken and inconsistent compared to other enemies that may die in a few well-placed shots. According to Madfinger Games, certain enemies were not working as intended, and bullet cavities created from well-placed rounds were not doing what they were supposed to do, so no organ damage was registering. So outside of some buggy encounters, let's talk about how enemy AI responded and moved during gunfights. I would say enemies had very erratic movement patterns, unrealistic reactions to what you would expect from an enemy when engaged. Not many of them sought to take cover, and many would just run out in the open and strafe back and forth while shooting. There seems to be no response or animations from enemies being shot. They remain steadfast in their assignment and keep shooting, or sometimes they don't do anything at all and just stand there waiting to be killed. I would like to see some specific animations for well-placed shots, limping, hopping, twisting, and just showcasing that they've been hit. As of now, if an enemy is programmed to shoot, no matter what you do, they will keep shooting until they die. There seems to be no in-between from what I've witnessed during my time playing so far. Implementing more behavioral patterns while in firefights, such as aggressive assaults, flanking maneuvers, or defensive formations, suppression, and leapfrogging, can add depth to these encounters, and I'm hoping to see these types of changes in the future. Loot. In my time in Gray Zone Warfare, looting didn't feel very special, but we also have to remember the game isn't going to have a wide variety of weapons. But outside of finding keys off of enemies, I didn't come across many things that made me feel like my time searching for gear was worth it. Maybe an odd drop here and there. I think A Squad found a couple of cool weapons and attachments, but thank God for the vendors and the steady flow of cash, because I just kept gearing up at base. An M4 with an ACOG and some basic gear, and I was good to go. Maybe I'd come across an interesting AK with some attachments on it here and there, but nothing too crazy. Perhaps the game loop won't be as gear focused as other extraction shooters, but we'll have to see how gear and loot is handled moving forward. Quests and quest progression. Eventually, quests will provide significant gear upgrades by leveling up your vendors by completing their tasks. If that's the case, then quests are working as intended. However, if some people are assuming quests are there to progress your character's gear and weapons, they might be wondering why there's no substantial rewards in the early game at the end of every quest. But players will have to be patient and just keep on questing and leveling their vendors to gain access to new gear and weapons. And while on the topic of quests, I do believe that some quests can provide a sense of exploration and feeling lost, but others should provide the player with map grid coordinates to better help players not waste too much time wandering around feeling lost with every single quest that is given. Some quests have good specifics, but others are just a bit too tedious and could have players wandering around too long trying to figure out where to go. Also, quests need to count for the entire group. I will say that again. Quests need to count for the entire group. I had a kill an HVT quest that I did with A Squad Gaming, and A Squad was the one that put the bullets in them, and we had to leave the area and come back for a respawn for me to shoot the guy and put bullets in him to complete the same quest. This has to be fixed, and all quests at the very least should be party-wide. Enemy presence and locations. Enemies always seem to be outside and rarely are found inside buildings. Now, enemy presence always being outdoors can make these urban areas feel unnatural and detract from the overall realism and immersion of the game world. In real-world urban environments, buildings and structures are often occupied by people, whether they are civilians or hostile combatants. Urban combat scenarios typically involve close-quarter engagements and dynamic encounters within buildings and structures, and I think the game will need to balance the amount of AI enemies that are outside and inside. With the denser enemy presence indoors, the urban environments will have a bigger sense of danger and unpredictability. The presence of hostile forces within buildings adds to the world-building aspects as well. Enemies resting, using the bathroom, or just hanging out. By increasing enemy AI presence indoors, developers can enhance the realism, immersion, and gameplay variety of urban environments, creating more engaging and dynamic experience for players. There also seems to be no civilians in this game world, and I'm wondering if Madfinger Games intends on adding them. Now, as far as everything else, the miscellaneous things that crossed my mind, let's get into that. There were times I wondered if having enemies driving around from city to city would provide a bit more engagement out in the world. A convoy here and there on the main roads, keeping players on their toes, allowing for an ambush or stealth opportunity. For now, there is a lot of nothing outside the compounds. A random patrolling group of enemies in the jungle wouldn't hurt in my opinion. Perhaps AI squads moving between cities and minor compounds. However, this is where the devs maybe are thinking about PvP. Let's get into that. I experienced Infel LZ camping, and I think it will be a major issue with this game, and as it is now, there's no way this game can go live with how PvP works. Players can't aim and shoot while in their helicopters, so landing at an LZ renders players as sitting ducks, and campers could have their way with any player infilling to an LZ. The devs are going to have to figure out how to balance PvP with how things are working right now, because you can't have helpless players entering the game world from a helicopter with no control of their character and then immediately enter a PvP situation and get camped. There has to be a way to figure out PvP around the LZs and allow players to have full control of their characters while on the helicopters. I don't know if the developers want to create things like area bombardments with munitions or smoke drops, or just have landing zones guarded by AI who will laser beam griefers. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do at this point, but they're going to have to do something with the landing zones and campers. As far as PvP in your base locations, antagonizing rival teams in their starting zones for PvP will become widespread once the game is released to the public. It seems bases aren't well guarded by AI, and players AFK or in menu are going to find themselves getting killed and perhaps camped. Griefers looking to get easy loot as they LZ camp or base camp will become a huge issue in this game. And then when PvP does happen, there's no way to identify friend from foe really, other than opening a game map and trying to see what friendlies are around you. Having to constantly map check to determine your friendlies' locations to see if you're looking at friend or foe is a big issue. All gear seems to be the same, and there's no distinctive uniforms or team identifiers aside from constantly looking at your map or playing with it open. In my opinion, PvP is going to be a huge shit show, and I'm glad they will have PvE servers for those people who just want to play the game and not have to worry about an unbalanced PvP game. Some regular mentions that I can think of while enjoying my time in Gray Zone Warfare: stacking items that have been used. I was unable to stack things like bandages that were 2 out of 4 and 1 out of 4. I'd like to be able to consolidate these types of items. I had issues with flying off small hills and constantly hurting my shins. Your character would rather float off a small slope than attempt to navigate it, which was annoying at times. And the one thing I could say was the biggest issue for me was that nothing actually had a toggle. We need a toggle for anything that can be toggled. Aiming, sprinting, crouching, leaning. I hope the devs implement a toggle system, because my hands do begin to hurt after a while holding down buttons all game. A toggle for these controls would help a lot of people with hand issues, and I think a toggle is a huge accessibility issue right now. And that's it. There might be more, but this is more than enough. My time in Gray Zone Warfare has been fun so far, and I am enjoying myself immensely. Depending on when the game goes into early access, I wouldn't expect perfection, but you can definitely sink a lot of time into the game in its current state and still have a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to playing more in the future and to see where Madfinger Games goes from here. They have a lot of feedback on both the technical side and from their player base testing the product, so I can only hope we will see some huge improvements moving forward, which will hopefully only make the game better. Okay guys, that's my review and honest opinion on Gray Zone Warfare in its current state. What do you guys think of the game so far with what you've been seeing? Let me know in the comments below and we'll discuss it like always. Alright guys, that's all for now. Everyone have a great day and I will see you all in the next video.